What is up, and welcome to another edition of the Mile High Hoops podcast. As always, I am your host, Zach Bai, and as always, I appreciate you spending a sliver of your busy day with me right here on the pod. Guys, Merry Christmas. This will be our last podcast before the holiday, and we'll get a couple days off and come back next week after Christmas and do some more reacting. But it's been a fun stretch here. It's been a really fun stretch of Denver Nuggets basketball. We're reacting to today a 113-104 victory on the road against the Toronto Raptors. A place that, while we don't think of Toronto as like a going to Atlanta or what's another bugaboo for Denver? I'll just keep it to Atlanta because that's like historically what we've talked about here on this podcast. It's just like problematic for whatever reason. Doesn't matter who's playing for either team, going to Atlanta for its own reasons. We don't talk about Toronto like that, but the Denver Nuggets were actually 2-5 in their last 7 games at Toronto. Jamal Murray making his homecoming actually won in Toronto for the first time since 2018. Think about it, guys. It's about to be 2024 here in like 5 seconds. So it's been a half a decade since Jamal Murray went back and won in his home country. A couple thoughts here that I want to get to. A couple thoughts on the starters, a couple thoughts on the bench, and I want to give a couple thoughts on the NBA straw poll that my buddy Tim Bontemps put out. That has become like almost tradition in NBA circles at this point, that I almost like click on it and be like, okay, like I'm covering most of my eyes. And we'll get to that at the end. First of all, I hope you guys are doing great. Hope you enjoyed that win on Wednesday night. You know, and we talked about this a couple days ago. Man, the Nuggets are about 3 minutes away from being on the second longest winning streak in the NBA, which actually the Clippers hold right now. I believe they've won 9 in a row, believe it or not. I still have my questions and my challenge flags on that team, but that's a different conversation for a different day. But yeah, I mean, they let that game go against Oklahoma City, which we talked about earlier in the week on Tuesday. But outside of that, in that game that they had under control, man, you're talking about wins in Atlanta, winning in Chicago, beating the Brooklyn Nets at home, beating the Dallas Mavericks like a drum a couple nights ago on Monday evening. And then really, you know, being in a driver's seat from start to finish. The Nuggets did allow the Raptors to come back in the game in the later stages. And then the starters came back in and squelched the rebellion from the Raptors. Let's look at some of the numbers here and talk about some of the performances. You know, where I want to start here is actually, I know I said I'll talk about the starters first, but I want to talk about Peyton Watson, who really, for me, once again, is sort of one of these legitimate subplot storylines to this NBA season. We keep on talking about really 3 younger guys, younger players, second-year Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, and Julian Strawther are really the key. Now, Zeke Naji can kind of come and go, and he was okay, I guess, on Wednesday night. Needs to make layups, which I'm not going to, sit here and break down how Zeke Naji needs to make layups. Just need to make layups or dunk the basketball. Figure it out. But Peyton Watson, I want to be careful with the way I say this. I don't want to say he's turning the corner because I know hiccups are coming. I know the other shoe is going to drop. But let's just be where our feet are. Peyton Watson is playing great basketball right now. Fantastic. And defensively, that's the reason why Peyton Watson truly was picked with the 30th overall pick in that 2022 draft. All right. Defensively right now, that is the hallmark of his game. We've seen him out there guarding some of the league's better players. We just talked about it in the closing moments against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But think about what I said. Closing moments. Peyton Watson is out in the game when you wouldn't have forecasted that to be the case maybe a month ago. And I just absolutely love to see it. So defensively, I think I know what I'm going to get on most nights from Peyton Watson. But offensively has been obviously tricky. I mean, let's not forget, this is a guy who averaged the least amount of points for a first-round draft pick in NBA draft history. Averaged 3 points a game at UCLA. So this was always going to be a big-time project for Denver, but it's one of these, man, it's one of these, with the 30th pick, you talk about high risk or low risk, high reward. That's the definition of Peyton Watson's existence in Denver, and I'm already starting to taste the flavor of the dividends of drafting this kid and watching him develop offensively. Double digits for a fourth consecutive game. Hit at least a 1 3-pointer for the fourth consecutive game. He now has 7 threes in the last 4 games. I'll just raise my hand and mark me down as someone who did not see this coming offensively for Peyton Watson. He's just freaking fun to watch. He is, man, and he's shooting it confidently. He looks just like a confident player. His minutes are there every single night, and that's got to be half the battle, right? It's like if you don't know you're going to play, and I know you can say, well, you're a professional, you should be ready to play every night. Yeah, it just doesn't work like that. It's just, in theory, it does. In practice, it does not. So when you know you're going to play every single night, and that's where we're at with Peyton Watson, 18 minutes on Wednesday night against Toronto, 24 against Dallas, 16 against Oklahoma City, 24 against Brooklyn, 23 against Chicago, 20 against Atlanta. Like, his minutes are there every single night. And here within the last week and a half, he is just freaking maxing out his minutes. And I love to see it. I'm here for it. He was 5 of 6 from the field. 3 of 5, coming off a 3 of 5 game the previous contest against Dallas, which was coming off a 5 of 8 against Oklahoma City, which was coming on the heels of 7 and 10 of 10 against Brooklyn. So again, is this level of efficiency sustainable? No, I don't believe that with any ounce of my being, but I am just enjoying the moment and watching him build that way. And we talked about this on Tuesday, just building a library of good NBA moments. So I'm not worried about what he's going to average or what his percentages are going to be in the next month. I am just enjoying what I'm seeing. I'm loving it, and I want to see more of it, of course, as does everyone in Nuggets Nation. Aaron Gordon continues to play well. You look at his numbers on Wednesday night, not earth-shattering, but freaking just solid. Defensively, rock solid. Offensively, efficient, 6 of 9 from the floor, 12 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. He was a plus 14 when he was out there, so he continues his, kind of rounding back into, I don't want to say championship level form because he's still, getting there. But there was good stretch here, of probably 15, 17, maybe 20 games where it was just like, once a week you would see him. And he just wasn't playing up to his potential for whatever reason. Maybe a tired coming off a championship run. He was dealing with the strained heel where he missed some games. But really, since he has come back from taking some time off, just playing really well. Just playing really well, man. He's been in double figures for now 7 consecutive games. And if you isolate really like the last, let's call it 2 weeks, his a field goal percentage is spiking like an IBM stock in 1998. His production, just with the raw stats, are there. So I love to see it. I just want to see more of it and just make sure that guy's healthy for the stretch run. A couple more thoughts here on Wednesday night's game. Michael Porter Jr. continues to struggle shooting the basketball. All right. Right now, the truth of the matter is he's not a top 60 scorer in the NBA, okay? Not a top 60 scorer in the NBA. He's been in single figures in 3 of the last 6 games. It's kind of rolling of the dice every night with Michael Porter Jr. Am I going to see 20 like I saw against Oklahoma City, or am I going to see 3 like I saw against Atlanta? Am I going to see 8 like I saw against Dallas? So it's kind of like an 8 ball that you kind of shake. And you don't know what answer it's going to spit out at you. So that continues to be a little bit frustrating. And depending on, to some folks, a lot of bit frustrating, or just depending on who you are. Look, the bench, and shout out KCP, 4 or 5 from the field, but before we move on. And I have one more note on Jamal. But KCP, double figures, 4 or 5 from the floor, hit a big 3 when I'll put big 3 in air quotes, because Toronto started to come back and started to give like Oklahoma City vibes. Like, wait, why is this lead at 8, when it was at 20? But KCP hit a big shot to bring that lead, I think from 8 to 11 off a Jokic assist. KCP had been in single figures in 5 of the previous 6 games. Okay. So I like the fact that he actually got to 10 points, made a couple threes, was really efficient from the floor. Love KCP's presence out there as always. And then Jamal, didn't shoot it particularly well, did get to 20 points, had 6 assists to just 2 turnovers. I wanted that guy to win in Toronto. His family was there. His dad is there watching him in person. He had friends there. You want that moment for Jamal. And it was pretty cool that the Raptors, and I want to make sure I got to this, that the Raptors honored him during the game, where they put a video of him up on the Jumbotron, and just what he has done for Canadian basketball. Canadian basketball has come such a long way. But even, and obviously so much credit is deserved to the Raptors being in Toronto themselves and Vince Carter's presence in Canadian basketball. And then, of course, Steve Nash bringing it to another level with his multiple MVP campaigns. But even since Jamal Murray has got into the league, which is, 2015 or whatever it is, Canadian basketball has even grown since then. So I love growing the game. It's such a global game. I said when I was working back in Albany, New York, probably, I've been in Denver for, this is my 7th Nuggets season. So I probably said 10 years ago that I believed that we were about 10 years away from every other player in the National Basketball Association being from outside of the United States. We're not quite there, man, but we're getting close. And don't ever overlook Jamal Murray's, like there are kids growing up in Canada who Jamal Murray is their Michael Jordan. And they don't know about Mike. They don't really care about LeBron. Like Jamal Murray is their basketball hero. He's who hangs on their walls. They identify with him. And I don't want to ever overlook that. So I was really happy that the Raptors honored Murray's contributions to the game through that lens of Canada. There in that it was during the second quarter that they honored him, and he really appreciated it. By the way, you hear some of his quotes after the game, like that stuff means a lot to Jamal. He cares about the game and he cares a lot about Canadian basketball. All right, that's really all I wanted to get to from the game itself. Could spend a little bit more time on the bench. Strother gets to 7 points on 3 of 6 shooting. Love that. Christian Brown not really shooting it well. Had a Sports Center dunk, taken away from him on kind of like what I thought it was a ticky-tack foul. But Brown is not really, lighting up the scoreboard or anything like that. He's averaging about 8 points a game in the month of December, about 8.5 for the year. But defensively, I know what I'm going to get most nights with Christian Brown. And that's true of most every night of those 3 Nuggets that we're really watching closely in Strother and in Peyton Watson and in Christian Brown. Defense needs to be their identity, and shots are going to come, shots are going to go. But as long as that is still the hallmark of that second unit, I'm good with it. They're continuously growing, and I love to see the development of that second unit, which is really, again, we talked about it on Tuesday, one of the overarching themes of this season. Okay, what else here? Let me double check my notes before we move on to the. Okay. Yeah. I had it emphasized in my notes with Jokic here before we talk about the straw poll that I wanted to get to. Him exerting dominance down the stretch of the game. He was not going to let what happened against Oklahoma City happen against Toronto. And Jokic finishes with 31 points in 38 minutes. 10 of the 31 came in the final quarter. So when there was the sense of urgency cranked up a little bit, he was there to answer the bell. You just love to see it. Jokic, 31 points, 15 rebounds, 6 assists to just 2 turnovers, had multiple blocks, a 2-block game, and hit threes. Was 3 of 5 from 3. So really good stuff from the head of the snake, Jokic, who is now in the first iteration of the Tim Bontemps straw poll, which this guy, who we actually have mutual friends, we play in the same fantasy football league together. I'm talking about Bontemps, not Jokic. This has turned into like a cottage industry for Tim, and he has cornered this market, and I love it. It's always interesting. There's 4 different versions of this, I believe. This is the first one. The final one comes, I believe, after the season. I wouldn't get too caught up in it, but let's talk about it just in general because it's always, it has been a really hyper-relevant conversation here in Denver. So guess who is leading the straw poll? Joel Embiid. And here's what I'll say. Joel Embiid deserves to be leading the straw poll right now. Now, these things evolve. Whoever is the leader of the straw poll right now, that may not be and likely will not be. History actually says the last 3 years, whoever leads in the first straw poll does not end up being the NBA MVP. This time last year, it was Jason Tatum. The year before that, it was Steph Curry. The year before that, it was LeBron James. So don't get caught up and get in your feelings about this. But I'll say this about Embiid. The guy deserves to be the leader in the straw poll. He's averaging 35 points a game. He is averaging 12 rebounds a game. And he's averaging 6 assists on, almost 55% shooting. And it feels like every night that I check in on NBA League Pass or just going over scores, Joel Embiid is putting 40 or 50 on someone. He dropped 51 points on the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have been, the best team in the Western Conference this season. 51 guys on 17 of 25 shooting. Did he shoot a bunch of free throws? Yeah. Did he make a bunch? Yeah, he did. He plays with force. So he was great on Wednesday night. He dropped 40 on Chicago before that, 42 on Charlotte before that, 35, and then 41 in back-to-back games against the Pistons, 34 against the Wizards, 38 against Atlanta, 50 against Washington. So, we're talking about Embiid for 10 games in a row. Like Jokic is coming off a 31-point game. Embiid has scored more than that for 10 straight games. So just give him credit. It doesn't need to be divisive. You don't need to step on someone's head to elevate someone else's. And he's leading the straw poll. He had 63 first-place votes compared to Jokic's 21, and Jokic is in second in this poll. And I think Jokic deserves to be. And he's followed right by Giannis Antetokounmpo and SGA in Oklahoma City. I'm not going to dwell on it too much because the season's so young. Right? The season is so stinking young, and I'm not going to obsess over it. My guess is this is how I think this goes. Embiid will either slow down or at some point get hurt or not have the team success to match the production. Jokic will just be steady Eddie. The Nuggets are about to go on a run. The Nuggets may take over the number 1 seed from Minnesota here in the next 2 months. And Jokic's raw numbers, advanced numbers are going to scream that he's the MVP. And it's going to come down to Jokic finishing 1 and Embiid finishing 2, or Embiid finishing 1 and Jokic finishing 2. I just don't this is so interesting. I could do a half hour on this, and I'm not going to because I don't want to get caught up in it. But, this time last year, the previous year's playoffs were held against Nikola Jokic. Are the previous year's playoffs going to be held against Joel Embiid? It's a regular season award, right? But we knew it carried more meaning for Jokic a year ago. And the playoff exits were held against him. Are they going to be held against Embiid with that same energy? Just rhetorical. Put it in your back pocket. All right, guys, we're going to leave it there for now. Really appreciate you being with me here on the podcast. Thank you for the listenership. I am so thankful that we are back for season number 6 of this podcast. We are not a podcast without you. So thank you for being here. Please tell a friend. I know there's a lot of great folks who cover this fantastic basketball team. We just want to be in the mix, all right? And the best way to spread this podcast is by word of mouth. Rate, review, subscribe. All that is fantastic, and we need all that. But your genuine passing along to the next person is truly the spine of this podcast. So thank you for being here. I hope you have a Merry Christmas. For what it's worth, we're going to be gone for a couple days. I think the Nuggets are about to go undefeated on the road, and they're going to beat the Warriors on Christmas Day in the primetime slot, not tucked at the very end of the night. I love it. Guys, I hope you have a happy holiday. Enjoy the Denver Nuggets. They're a gift for us in the sports world, and stay safe. Count your blessings, and whatever happens in these next couple of road games and on Christmas Day, we're going to be back next week talking about it right here on the Mile High Hoop.